What is up, YouTube? This is Teakwood1 coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be talking to you about The Hound of the D'Urbervilles, the 2011 novel by Kim Newman, which exists as kind of a companion to Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes series. In the early 2010s, Titan Books had found some success in doing a revival of that literary franchise entitled The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Part of the gimmick was that these new novels usually mixed in other characters from Victorian literature. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise that Titan got the king of Victorian mashups, Kim Newman, to write a spin-off fleshing out Holmes' arch-nemesis, Professor James Moriarty. The idea being both to riff on a lot of the established imagery and plot elements of the series, but also give the Napoleon of crime some iconic adventures of his own. Adventure is the operative word there. One of the ways in which this book is distinct from the Holmes series is that while there are elements of mystery in the stories in this book, they are more action-packed and violent. Moriarty, of course, is not a detective, he's a kingpin. He's super intelligent, and that's well established, both in the original material and in this novel, but I thought that Newman did a great job of making him more than just a negative reflection of his rival from Baker Street, although there are certainly plenty of amusing parallels. He keeps wasps as pets, an obvious nod to Sherlock's beekeeping. There are several monologues that seem like photo negatives of famous Holmes quotes, emphasizing the difference in worldview between the two men. And my personal favorite, in Arthur Conan Doyle's A Scandal in Bohemia, the story in which Sherlock encounters Irene Adler, she gets the better of him, and forevermore he only refers to her as the woman, in a kind of a cold, contemptuous way. Well, a similar situation occurs here, but Moriarty simply calls Adler that bitch. The dark parallel thing is also true for the novel's narrator. Like Watson, the book is told from the first-person perspective of Moriarty's second fiddle, Colonel Sebastian Moran, nicknamed Basher. This is some of the best characterization of Newman's literary career. Moran is, in almost every way, the polar opposite of Watson. A loudmouth, while Watson is humble, someone who relishes violence and the giving of pain, while Watson's a doctor. You get the idea. I'd compare him to C.S. Lewis's Screwtape, where he's not likable in a traditional sense, but he is entertaining, and as such, the reader finds themselves softening toward him. Both he and the professor are despicable, but in a delightful way. They're really perfect anti-heroes, and seeing them pull off a series of perfect crimes is invigorating. And make no mistake, there's a lot of book in this book. It's what we used to call a fix-up novel, and that it's more like a bunch of novellas that are collected here. 7 adventures, each one feeling distinct, like an episode in the lives of our main characters. Newman favors this style a lot, actually. Angels of Music, which was kind of a loose spinoff to this, also uses it. So does Johnny Alucard, the 4th book in the Anno Dracula series. But I think this might be the most effective use of it, because all 7 of the stories here are bangers, and each one has a different fun gimmick. A couple of them are riffs on existing Arthur Conan Doyle stories, but most go off on their own wild direction. I want to be clear, though, that familiarity with the source material is not required here. The first portion of the novel, for example, functions as a kind of pseudo-sequel to Riders of the Purple Sage. I've never read a word of that book, and I still found the story to be a kick-ass Western shoot-'em-up. The central relationship is fascinating. While the partnership between Moriarty and Moran never really blossoms into a friendship, they do spend decades together, and they are, in both cases, the only living person who truly understands the other. And the book dedicates plenty of time to ruminating on just what that means. The second to last story, which reads like if Ian Fleming wrote a Victorian novella, is particularly interesting as it brings some of Moriarty's family into the drama. They are, of course, just as crooked and malicious as he is, but not as intelligent. Speaking of intelligence, one of the most satisfying parts of this novel is that it is genuinely clever in both concepts and execution. Often, since Moran isn't quite the genius that Moriarty is, the professor's plan will be a mystery until the very end. But once it comes together, it's great. Probably my favorite individual tale is The Adventure of the Six Maledictions, which involves an unlucky soul who happened to stumble upon a cursed artifact and now is on the run from the supernatural guardians of said artifact. He comes to Moriarty for protection, and the professor's plan is as follows. Steal a bunch more cursed artifacts, and when all of the different cults and monsters are real pissed off, send them back to the wrong group. That way, they'll all be too busy fighting each other to do anything to the person who wronged them in the first place. It's some of the most fun I've had reading a book this year. That's nothing too out of the ordinary. A Kim Newman book is always a lark, in my opinion, but the emotional subtext here really helps it stand out, even from the better stuff in his bibliography. As I said, the relationship between the two lead characters is great, and toward the end, when they've spent almost 40 years working together, there's some moments that do tug on your heartstrings, although they remain, as ever, thieves and rogues of the lowest moral character. Without getting too specific, this is also one of the more satisfying endings to a Kim Newman book, in my opinion. All in all, Hound of the D'Urbervilles is pretty great. A fun read with good characters and lots of interesting ideas. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This is T. Quentin 1 signing out.